Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing how to know your ex is missing you. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing how to know your ex is missing you. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you will want to know if your ex missed you. In today's podcast, I'll be discussing 3 ways to know that your ex is missing you. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is by check your socials after a while. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, one of the ways that I believe you can tell that your ex is missing you is if they check your social media, but making sure that it's after a while. So let me explain this as for why I believe this can be a reason that you can discover that your ex is missing you and why it's so important that it's after a while. So, if you've been dumped, for instance, yesterday, and you find out that your ex is viewing one of your stories today, tomorrow, the next day, or whatnot, within the short-term range post-breakup, I don't necessarily believe that this showcases that they are missing you in a way where they want to reconnect. I think it's much more likely that they're checking out your social media because they want to know how you are. Maybe they're worried about you. Maybe they're feeling pity. Maybe they're concerned. Maybe they're trying to get a feeling of how you're taking the news. But I don't believe they're necessarily wanting to reconnect in a romantic relationship. And the reason I say this is because for somebody to end a relationship, they would have lost romantic emotional attraction for you. And this is something which needs to be regrown if they're going to change their mind and want to reconnect. And so I believe it's very unlikely that during this short period of time, they could have regrown enough romantic emotional attraction to want to reconnect with you. Now, of course, nothing is impossible. And some people do get back together very, very quickly. But from my research and experience, it seems to be around 6 months or beyond where a dumper is likely to regrow this attraction and decide to reach out. That is what I would say is the average amount of time. So when we look at the likely scenarios, if you find out that your ex-dumper is viewing your social media via a few days or weeks, I believe that it's much more likely that your ex-dumper is viewing your socials because they're wondering how you're getting on, they're wondering how you're reacting to the breakup. They are seeking and trying to find out how your coping mechanism is moving forward on this. I think that's much more likely than them wanting to reconnect with you in a romantic sense. However, when we move beyond this, when we move beyond the weeks, when we move into the months, I believe that this is when, if your ex checks your social media, it could be for a very different reason. Once we move into the months, your ex-dumper is no longer going to be worried or concerned per se about how you've taken the news of being dumped, because of course it's been a while. They're no longer going to be wondering to themselves, okay, how's my ex taking this? I dumped them a few days ago. I want to know what they're putting on social media. This is very unlikely to be something which is causing them concern or worry at this stage. I would say now, moving forward into the months, that if your ex checks your social media, it's only going to be because they're thinking about you, and they're thinking about you because ultimately they miss you. Nobody does anything for no reason. If somebody has deliberately checked out your social media, and the easiest way to know this in most instances is that they view a story, although there could be other ways as well. If you find out that your ex has checked your social media stories 5-6 months after the breakup, then I can only conclude that they are thinking about you and moving into missing you. They want to see how you're getting on, they want to see what you're doing, but not because they're worried of how you've coped with a breakup. That was months ago. Now they're doing it because they miss what you look like. They miss your voice. They miss your laugh. they're wondering what you're doing because their life probably isn't shining particularly. Their life probably isn't as exciting right now as they thought it might be moving forward, and they just want to know what you're doing because they remember the good times. They remember the good days. They remember those moments that you had together which were positive, because not everything was negative. Unfortunately, your relationship ended, but it doesn't mean it was all bad. And this is why I believe if your ex checks your socials months into the future after your breakup, they're much more likely to be doing it because they miss you more than they're worried about you. They're much more likely to be doing it because they're thinking about you in a positive way, rather than checking how you're reacting and if you're saying anything about them, which is what they might be doing in the early days. They might be checking your social media in the days after your breakup just to make sure you're not putting anything bad about them online, okay? That could be something that they're really thinking about, and that's why they do it initially in those days and weeks. But once we get into the months, I honestly believe this is a sign that they're missing you. Now, in most instances, I wouldn't suggest you as a dumpee reach out to them, even if they're checking your social media. I would suggest that they are missing you as I've described, but they need to get to a necessary high point of attraction and intrigue before they're likely to reach out to you themselves. And that is always the strongest position to be in, for your ex, the dumper, to reach out to you. So if you find this sign taking place, if you see this with your own eyes, that your ex is checking your social media out months into the future, yes, this is a good sign. It's not quite at the moment where they want to reach out to you, but I would say there is a strong possibility that it may one day happen. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is they send you an indirect direct approach. So an indirect direct approach is when somebody sends contact, i.e. a message directly to you, not through a third party, not on a comment, but they actually send you a direct message, a one-on-one message that only you can see. But the reasoning they give for this message is indirect, whereas the actual reality is because they're missing you. Now that might have sounded a bit of a jumble of words, so let me give you some examples. And these are real-world examples. This isn't just something that I'm creating. These are instances that I've been told by some of my audio coaching clients over the years. So here are a couple of examples that I was told. I was told an example of when a dumper reached out to a dumpee many, many months into the future after dumping them, and the message said along the lines of, "Hey, I saw this product in a shop that I know you'd really like." Now, I'm not going to say the product, I'm going to keep this as private as I can, but it was a specific type of product that the dumpee would really appreciate, and it's something that they did like. However, this isn't something that a dumper, months into the future, should be spending their time sending a message to their ex. This isn't something that you would do. You wouldn't just send a message to somebody that you ended a relationship with and didn't ever want to see again, because you don't want to reignite their thoughts about you. If you don't want to see somebody again, you don't send them a message at all, let alone about something so insignificant. So this indirect direct approach was basically saying, "Hi, I was in this shop and I saw this product that I knew you would like. I just thought I'd let you know." And the dumpee was thinking, well, that's great, but why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this months and months into the future? Can't you remember the fact that you dumped me? Yeah, that is a real world example. Another example that I was told by one of my audio coaching clients was they received a text from their ex, again, many months into the future after being dumped, and the text said, "Hey, I've just seen that your favourite band is in town in a few weeks. I just wanted to let you know that." Again, the dumpee was thinking, well, that's wonderful, but why are you telling me this? Now, in both instances, the dumpees dealt with the situation in the best way that they could, because the way you navigate such communication is crucial. If you want to try to get your ex back, you need to behave in a way where your ex, the dumper, wants to continue the conversation via growing the communication stage. And this is something which is quite tricky. People say to me that they believe that the no contact period is the hardest. But my belief is that the communication stage is even more difficult and challenging to navigate, because not only are you receiving contact that you have to respond to fairly quickly, but you are walking a tightrope to make sure you convey the right feelings, emotion, and information back to your ex. So I believe that this is actually a trickier period than the no contact rule, but it is a step in the right direction. If you receive an indirect direct approach, this is certainly because your ex is missing you. They're not going to be sending you some type of message in these regard if they're not thinking about you in a positive way. Why would somebody waste their time doing this? Why would a dumper who never wants to see their ex again send these types of content? Now again, the examples I gave were examples. If it happens to you, it's not likely to be exactly as I've described, but you can read between the lines about whether or not it's an indirect direct approach. Now if you want support and guidance about the communication stage or anything regarding breakups, relationships and dating, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website www.dateme.tips for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast about how to know your ex is missing you. And point number 3 is they ask about you. Now when I say they ask about you, I'm speaking in reference to if you have mutual friends or family that your ex asks questions to about yourself. So for instance, you get told by your cousin, for instance, that they bumped into your ex out and about somewhere, and your ex was quite quick to ask the question of how you were doing. Now, although you might think that this is something which is just polite, I would suggest that this is more inclined regarding them missing you. If, and this is a big if, it is a while into the future. So we're linking back to point number 1. Remember when I spoke in point number 1 where I was saying that if your ex checks your socials in the early days or weeks, it's probably because they're worried about you. But if it's many months in the future, it's probably because they're missing you. I would suggest this is the same in point number 3. Now, if your ex was to bump into your cousin, as the example I gave, and they bumped into them just a few days after the breakup, then they might ask the question, how's my dumpee? How are they? Have you heard the news? We broke up. That is very natural. That is the worry. That's the concern. They might even be concerned about how the cousin would react to them. It's very understandable. That is how that behaviour could be. But if we wind on into the future, if we move many months into the future and now see that your ex the dumper bumps into your cousin 4 or 5 months after dumping you, and they're quite quickly bringing into the conversation I would suggest that they're missing you. There is no good reason to do this. If somebody's ended a relationship and doesn't want anything to do with the extended family or mutual friends or whatever it may be, there is no need for them to have a conversation which goes in the direction of you. They can say a few polite words, not mention you at all, and then move on with their day. That is how somebody would likely react if they don't care about the situation and if they don't want to convey any feelings towards you, because they will recognise this information will likely get back to you. If your ex-dumper speaks to your cousin, they are likely to understand that they will probably pass this information on. So they will recognise that anything they say is probably going to go back to you. And if they're speaking about you, if they're asking about you, it can be a sign that they're missing you. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be a cousin. I mentioned a moment ago it could be mutual friends. Now, the difference with mutual friends is that your ex-dumper might be seeing them regularly throughout your breakup and beyond, just as you might be doing. And this could be something where, of course, initially, the breakup would be common conversation. But as the months tick by, this could be a situation where your ex-dumper is not going to be mentioning you to mutual friends as much, because again, why would they? Your mutual friends will understand what's happened. Your mutual friends will recognise that it could be a touchy subject. They're probably not even going to bring you up anymore, even though your ex-dumper is seemingly wanting to in this example. This is a definite clue that your ex-dumper is thinking about you, that they're missing you, they're wondering about you in a positive way. Again, I think it very much strongly links to the length of time. If this is a few days after the breakup, a few weeks, then obviously there is reason why they would speak with mutual friends about you. But months down the line, it's not likely to be the case. So if you hear from a mutual friend, hey, you'll never guess who's been speaking about you and wondering about you a few weeks ago when I last met up with this person, you ask him and say, your ex. Okay, This could be something which has happened 9 months into the future since the breakup. This is a sign that they're missing you. Now, it's important to say that there is no 100% guaranteed way to get your ex back. Nothing works 100% of the time and nothing fails 100% of the time. And it's the same when we look for clues. It's the same when we look for reasons and rationale about how somebody might be missing you. But what I can say is that points numbers 1, 2, and 3 today that I've given have been proven to be more likely than not to have a dumper missing their ex and eventually reaching out. I can't guarantee that will work in your instance, but what I can say is that certainly it is a good sign. Now, in most instances, I do not suggest dumpees reach out to their dumper. There might be some caveats to that rule, some exceptions to the rule, which mean you could speak of via my audio coaching service to really understand the specifics. But generally speaking, as a dumpee, I don't believe you should contact your ex again unless they contact you first. And although points 1, 2, and 3 are good signs that your ex might be moving in this direction, we can't ever promise or guarantee that it will happen. And that's why, whether you've seen these signs or not, you need to focus on moving forward with your own life, living your life to the full, making new connections, and doing your thing, achieving your goals, and realizing that you'll be fine either way. With or without your ex, you can have a positive future. Don't wait around. Yes, these signs are good signs, but they don't necessarily mean you will get back together. Even if you hear from your ex, like I said, the communication stage can be tricky and needs to be navigated effectively. But points 1, 2, and 3 are absolutely good signs and clues that you could be in the position in the future where you might hear from your ex again. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.